Known for their cinematic storytelling abilities, Japanese role-playing games are among the most celebrated genre in the video game industry and have been since their creation in the 1980s. These games differ from their Western counterpart by employing the Eastern Kisho Tenketsu method to storytelling, which adopts a bottoms-up approach as opposed to the top-bottom style often found in Western role-playing games and film. This style allows players to develop a much stronger psychological connection to the protagonists because the narrative slowly reveals the characters' motivations and backstories before revealing the true overarching conflict. Traditionally, this is comprised of 4 sections: introduction, development, twist, and conclusion. While characters are often slowly introduced during the first 2 sections, the twist, aptly named for the shockingly unexpected and sometimes bizarre plot twists, sometimes encompass the majority of the story. Though the Final Fantasy franchise is but one of many JRPGs to employ this Eastern storytelling technique, it is also known for its recurring use of memory error and trauma as prominent plot devices. As psychologist Ryan Kelly notes, many games in the series include protagonists who suffer one of 3 types of amnesia, which are all rooted in some form of physical or psychological trauma. Furthermore, these memory errors often serve as the single most important aspect of a particular character's psychological state within the overall plot. Their game-long development rooted in recovery is crucial in strengthening the bond between a character and the player. Unsurprisingly, associative music plays a significant role in the Final Fantasy franchise. Beginning with the Super Nintendo 1992 release of Final Fantasy IV, composer Nobuo Uematsu began employing leitmotific soundtracks comprised of character themes and a recurring main theme, both of which often endure some level of transformation over the game. Though not every transformation may act intrinsically with the drama, those that do offer deeper insight into characters, their past, their psychology, and remarkably, they provide us with the tools necessary for deciphering the story's underlying narrative. While main themes and character themes often have different associative meaning, Uematsu immediately began blurring their rhetorical boundaries, resulting in a curious type of thematic ambiguity among the music and its respective symbolism. This ambiguity often leads to fascinating narratological insight. Indeed, if the main theme of a game, which reflects the story's narrative, is somehow connected to a character theme, then what symbolic interpretation may be garnered when these themes are seemingly combined? I have identified 5 different compositional techniques that contribute to this sense of associative ambiguity that ultimately results in a type of thematic disassociation, which surprisingly helps to reveal the story's underlying narrative. Among these techniques are eponymous omission, which occurs when certain characters lack eponymously named themes. This is especially pertinent when a character is the only character lacking such a theme, or if a specific character is the only one with such a theme. Motivic networking, whereby a composer motivically connects a character's theme with the game's main theme, often in a subtle manner. Thematic hybridization, where complete phrases of different themes are combined. Associative troping, which occurs when a theme's association gradually changes over the story through topical shifts, resulting in a cinematic and musical trope. And the double idée fixe, which occurs when a game contains 2 different main themes, each with its own musical association and symbolism. Unsurprisingly, Uematsu often combines several of these techniques together, further enriching the symbolic ambiguity within a given soundtrack. In this paper, I examined several pieces within Final Fantasy VII's soundtrack, which lacks an eponymous theme for Cloud Strife, the game's leading protagonist who suffers severe dissociative fugue. I identify a single recurring harmonic and melodic motive embedded in the game's main theme that not only connects his theme to the subsequent transformation, but that it also unique within tracks exclusively connected to scenes involving Cloud's past and his path of self-discovery, which I suggest is the underlying narrative of Final Fantasy VII. With this newly identified leitmotif, I conclude by advocating for a deeper interaction between musical, psychological, and narratological analysis. Originally released in 1997 for the Sony PlayStation, Final Fantasy VII is one of the most iconic titles in the genre, winning countless awards for its gameplay and music, and consistently appearing on lists ranking the so-called best games of all time. Although it was the first game within the series released for a system capable of live recorded music, Nobuo Uematsu opted to use a MIDI sequencer for the soundtrack, which consists of approximately 88 individual tracks. In addition to a recurring main theme, most protagonists and antagonists enjoy eponymously named themes. As Cloud is the only main protagonist who lacks an overtly associative theme, many fans and scholars suggest that Cloud's leitmotif is in fact the game's main theme. However, seeing that it is not exclusively associated with Cloud, I disagree with this assessment, though I do believe that there is an important connection between Cloud, his leitmotif, and the game's main theme. Final Fantasy VII centers around Shinra, a fascistic energy conglomerate with governmental power, and Avalanche, an eco-terrorist organization determined to put an end to Shinra's monopoly and its destruction of the planet. The player immediately takes on the role of Cloud Strife, who has been hired by Avalanche to help put an end to Shinra's reign. Cloud eventually reveals what he believes is his past to the members of Avalanche, that he is a former member of Shinra's elite private military firm Soldier, and that he worked along the legendary soldier Sephiroth. As the game unfolds, players learn that this is not true, and that Cloud suffers from a number of different amnestic disorders related to a combination of traumatic childhood experiences, genetic experimentation, and further traumatic experiences following those experiments that led to the murder of his best friend Zack, the actual member of Soldier. As a result of the trauma, Cloud suffers from dissociative amnesia and false memory syndrome, leading him to unknowingly adopt Zack's identity while simultaneously believing that he is a clone of Sephiroth due to the genetic experiments. Remarkably, these plot points are all foreshadowed in the game's main theme and further developed in its subsequent transformations. The main theme to Final Fantasy VII is the longest and most formally complex main theme in Uematsu's soundtracks, consisting of a brief introduction, 2 larger A and B sections, and a connecting bridge. Over the length of the game, it endures 9 different transformations, most of which act intrinsically with the drama, bearing the mark of a genuine leitmotif. Beginning in G major, the introduction presents motive X of the main theme proper, immediately followed by a short motive Y that oscillates between F minor and its chromatic submedian D flat minor, or an LP relationship in Neo-Riemannian terms. This music is then sequenced down to F minor, with motive Y now consisting of an L relationship. The tonal ambiguity inherent within the Y motive, which is further developed over the soundtrack, is a subtle reflection of Cloud's dissociative fugue, which I acknowledge as his leitmotif and leitharmonie. Motive Y consists of 3 significant submotives: harmonic movement of a third, or YH, melodic motion of an ascending minor second, or YM, and melodic movement of a descending third, or YHM, which itself is based off of the melodic movement of the chords. These 3 submotives are actually what differentiate the various transformations of the main theme as a non-leitmotivic cyclic theme, akin to the simple Idée fixe, from Cloud's genuine leitmotif. To be sure, Cloud's YM and HM motives are only found in transformations of the theme that directly refer to Cloud's past. In this way, Uematsu unifies a soundtrack, connects Cloud directly to the narrative of the game, and musically aids players in exploring Cloud's past and his subconscious. The A section is presented in an AABA song structure. The A sections are comprised of motive X, and the contrasting B section is comprised of music motivically linked to Tifa's theme, Cloud's childhood friend and love interest. Cloud's YH motive, the harmonic movement of a third, is embedded within the A section's chord progression, and is the most commonly used submotive of Cloud's leitmotif within the soundtrack. Here, it is found in its simplest presentation, involving both a diatonic and modal submediant chord, or an R and PL relationship between tonic. Unlike its use in other tracks, it does not suggest any tonal ambiguity and serves to harmonically unify much of the soundtrack. The bridge section combines Cloud's YH and YHM motive more chromatically. The motive is expanded to a 4-note statement consisting of L relationships and is then transposed up by 3 semitones, itself an RP relationship, with the last progression consisting of the surprising PL progression. Though the bridge does not modulate away from E, these statements cloud the music and tonal ambiguity, further reflecting Cloud's psychological state. The main theme's B section removes all traces of motive X of the main theme proper and develops all 3 submotives of Cloud's leitmotif. The section is saturated with dissonant 7th chords, diminished sonorities, and an ominous ostinato, which hints at the foreboding ostinato in Sephiroth's leitmotif, those chosen by the planet, as well as the track Mako Reactor, which itself narratively connects Cloud and Sephiroth. This section makes use of mostly PR and PL relationships centered around E before its obligatory climax, fade, and loop back to the beginning. As mentioned above, the YM and HM motives are unique unto tracks that directly reflect Cloud and his identity crisis: Anxious Heart, On That Day 5 Years Ago, and Who Am I? While the first 2 tracks enhance scenes where Cloud reveals what he believes are true events from his past, Who Am I is heard as Cloud and Tifa explore his subconscious to finally uncover his true memories. Anxious Heart is played as Cloud recalls the horrific events of 5 years prior, known as the Nibelheim Incident. He recalls that he and Sephiroth visited his childhood town of Nibelheim as members of Soldier to conduct an investigation, with his childhood friend Tifa as their town guide. Although the main theme proper does not appear in this track at all, it is replete with Cloud's Y, HM, and H motive. Moreover, Uematsu infuses elements of both Tifa's and Sephiroth's themes within this track, creating what Matthew Bribitzer-Stull refers to as the filmic technique of continuity cutting between 2 simultaneous scenes. Set in the same tonal center as Tifa's eponymous theme, Anxious Heart begins with 2 statements of Cloud's YHM motive played between F minor and D minor, and again between A flat major and C major, producing both a PR and LP or LR relationship. After this, a brief melody on the flute plays against a piano accompaniment consisting of these same harmonies, which itself recalls Tifa's own eponymous theme. Further strengthening the connection with Tifa, the music moves to a brief melody in F major played on the vibraphone, which is one of the defining timbres of her theme. The piece concludes with an ominous statement of Sephiroth's own leitmotif played in parallel fifths, which is fitting for the villain who eventually declares himself a demigod. In this one track, Uematsu provides musical insight into the past relationship between these characters while seeming to confirm Cloud's own musical identity. During Cloud's flashback, we learn that Sephiroth went insane after being led to believe that he is a direct descendant of the Ancients and that humans robbed his ancestors of their destiny. As a result, he set fire to the town of Nibelheim before attempting to take revenge on the rest of humanity. This scene is accompanied by the track On That Day 5 Years Ago, which consists of 4 phrases, all of which quote motive X of the main theme proper. Set in G minor, the second phrase presents motive X, interrupted by Cloud's YM motive, harmonized by an L relationship, itself Cloud's YH motive. A similar process occurs within the third phrase. It's important to note that this track is the only transformation of the main theme that overtly presents Cloud's YM motive, further strengthening the connection between this tragic recall of his past with the game's main theme. The final statement of the main theme proper plays upon more dissonant harmonies, concluding on a first inversion G half diminished 7th chord. Though these types of chords are difficult to describe with NRT labels, the harmonic ambiguity and dissonance foreshadows the last track associated with Cloud's amnesia titled Who Am I? Toward the end of the story, Cloud and Tifa explore Cloud's subconscious together in an attempt to fully recover his memories. This scene is enhanced with the track Who Am I?, which presents the main theme proper in its most dissonant and complex transformation of the soundtrack. Against a low drone, we hear a simple arpeggio in the middle register as the theme's X motive plays twice with progressively more dissonant harmonic accompaniment. The track's first phrase begins simply enough with a PR relationship between A minor and F sharp minor. The second statement of the phrase moves to much more dissonant and thus tonally ambiguous territory, whose melody seems to outline B flat minor. Harmonized by a G fully diminished 7 add 9 chord that moves to a B flat half diminished 7th chord, this progression provides a difficult reading with NRT labels, though it could be considered an extremely fuzzy RP relationship in Frank Lehman's terms, if we were to consider this to be a G minor and B flat minor. Regardless as to how one reads this tonally ambiguous statement, Uematsu preserves the third relationship from Cloud's YHM motive in the lowest register, which is the only harmonic motive grounding the listener. This foreground sketch presents the YHM motive played in the lowest register and demonstrates the increased level of dissonance, which leads to fuzzier and fuzzier NRT labels. The concluding phrase seems to bring us back to A minor, though with incredibly dissonant chords, before looping back to the beginning. Motive X from the main theme is removed. All Uematsu provides is a stacked B7 flat 5 chord with the lowest register providing the descending third movement from Cloud's YHM motive. These chords create a string of more fuzzy relationships before landing on the final chord that acts as a subtonic dominant ninth in A minor, which loops the music back to the beginning. As the final transformation of Cloud's leitmotif, it does seem appropriate that Uematsu's treatment of harmony becomes more saturated with dissonance as he struggles to remember his true self. Paired with a meter that seems to randomly switch between 6/8 and 5/8, this track completes the musical depiction of Cloud's identity crisis. The story concludes with the spirit of the player's deceased ally Eris protecting the planet from a meteor strike. The ending cinematic sequence contains one final track titled World Crisis, which, true to Uematsu's style, combines several character themes with the main theme as incidental music. Curiously, though Uematsu quotes fragments of character themes for Aerith, Tifa, Cid, and the Lifestream, Cloud's motive barely makes an appearance. The main theme is only stated once, with consonant harmonies, making use of the common R and PL relationships. All other statements of the main theme are either chromatically harmonized, or, as heard in the last statement, presented in a bitonal atmosphere of D minor and B flat minor. Though Cloud's YH motives are present, the entire ending is devoid of Cloud's YM and HM motive. He has successfully discovered his true self and his true past, and all that remains is the underlying connection between him and the game's main theme, and by extension, the story's narrative, through his YH motive. That Cloud's underlying YH motive is what connects the main theme and its many transformations together seems to suggest that Cloud's personal journey of self-discovery is directly connected to the story's underlying narrative. This is indeed confirmed in the expanded universe of the game. As depicted in subsequent sequels through several novels, games, and a full-length movie, each of the protagonists journey across the planet trying to find meaning in a world that they just helped save from total destruction. Though they may not suffer amnesia, they try to find their place in the world now that their long mission of protecting the planet is complete. Though Cloud may not have an eponymous theme, he is certainly not without musical representation. Though his own identity crisis is reflected through Uematsu's decision to refrain from giving Cloud such a theme, this compositional technique invites us to search harder for his musical identity using the character's psychological trauma as a basis for our analysis. By pairing psychological analyses with musical analysis in our quest to uncover narratological meaning, we may then reveal hidden symbolism within the soundtrack that may further enrich the meaning of both the story and the music.